For every river monster, there's an untold story. In this special episode, I take you beneath the surface like never before and reveal what it takes to bring these adventures to your screen. River Monsters takes me filming and fishing all over the world, and while we plan these expeditions meticulously, there's always one thing you can't control, and that's the weather.
Storms that you can't even imagine. High winds, flash floods, landslides.
Nobody's fished for goonch in these conditions before, and the monsoon's really starting. So that's my escape route, so I'm going to have to grapple my way up there somehow.
As a general rule, we just keep going because we don't really have a contingency for just sitting and taking time out. Also, that's all part of the reality.
Nothing will stop Jeremy fishing. He is one of the world's greatest anglers for this reason. In the Congo, we had some of the heaviest rainfall I've ever seen. The skies just opened, and the rain, you struggled to breathe. The rain was so thick.
When it gets that bad that although I might want to continue fishing, the kit just isn't going to function.
We're filming in this. We were out on the water and the storm hit us, and we just keep filming. And even with the weather protection provided, we managed to damage a lot of equipment. But you can't stop Jeremy when he's going out after a fish. At the end of that sequence, we had to shut down filming for about a day because the lens on the camera was filled with water. And we're in the middle of the Congo, we can't get more lenses, we can't do anything. So we had to go through a very careful process of getting water out of the lens, and we bake it on the fire with the rear elements exposed to try and get the condensation out. But it worked.
Typically, the crew is myself and 4 people, and that is about as tight as you can get it. Sometimes it's just me and a cameraman. But normally, myself, director, camera, sound, and assistant producer. It's a bit like being a band on tour or something. In fact, sometimes we've been picked up from the airport and the driver will look at us and go, "Are you a band?" And we go, no, we're a film crew.
I can only imagine that if you were in a band, it would be a lot more glamorous, maybe 5-star hotels, that sort of thing. But being on River Monsters and the sort of places that we go to, we have to camp quite a lot.
I think one of the most memorable trips for me in terms of accommodation was when we were in the Congo, Central African rainforest. You're not going to find motels there. So we're doing everything ourselves, our own cooking, taking in provisions. In this particular occasion, we were there for a matter of weeks. And what was quite nice about that was we started adding our own little touches, and in the end, it actually turned up a real home from home.
We made a sort of kitchen and dining area. All of our equipment was kept in a derelict building next to the tents, so we knew everything was safe and dry. We each took it in turns to cook a meal on a pot, on an open fire. Sometimes they were okay. We also made a shower area where we could have a wash every day. The ultimate luxury was a proper toilet that we'd made using a toilet seat that we'd bought from a town that we'd passed downriver.
One of the biggest nuisances in the tropics, it's not so much the big animals, it's the little ones. And no amount of making your camp look nice will help you evade them. And mosquitoes have to be probably the worst.
Yeah, this river is hungry for blood in the form of the mosquitoes just attempting to drain you at every opportunity. Super strong insect repellent, industrial strength. But here they don't seem to be completely put off even by that. You can cover yourself with it, then put your clothes on top of that. They'll still bite you.
They're very annoying, but also they're vectors for disease. You can catch malaria. I've had it once, maybe twice. It can be fatal. In my case, well, you get the sweats, you get the chills. I almost lost my vision. Very, very unpleasant. When we're filming, there's a lot of traveling, a lot of moving around from place to place. Single-engine planes, float planes for landing on water, sleeper trains, helicopters. I've taken longboats, even a motorbike. From leaving River Monsters HQ to arriving where we need to be, 36 hours is not uncommon. It's a very, very intensive process, and often what we do is when we're traveling, Just any opportunity to get a little bit of sleep, we take it. A lot of the time that we're travelling, we're on the water, and the reason for that is a lot of these places, there are no roads. Travelling on water is one of the things that worries me the most. If something happens with no roads nearby, then, you know, you're on your own. The most frightening experience I've had on water was on the Essequibo River in Guyana, in South America. This was a real expedition, very, very uninhabited, and so we're totally self-contained. There's no real scope along the way to refuel, to stock up with food, so we've got everything with us. Got a crew of about 4 or 5 people, and then a number of local helpers as well, and loads of supplies, big drums of fuel. We'd navigated these rapids using a local guide. We're pressing on up the river, and then we became aware, we've been looking behind, suddenly there's nobody behind us.
Something's happened here, we're going back. We were going upriver, these boats hanging back, there's something happened.
Suddenly there's stuff floating around and there's drums and things in the river. There's a couple of boats rafted together. Something's happened.
We were stopped in the middle of the river and we'd spoken to the director in another boat and he'd said it was okay for us to pack the equipment away. We had a long journey ahead of us. So Brendan, the cameraman, took his camera off his support rig and he stood up to stretch his legs. And I remember him saying, "That boat's gonna hit us." But by the time I looked up and turned around, the thing was on top of us.
It looked like there had been a collision. It looked like one of the boats had been hit by another boat. Now, these boats are not just carrying people, there's a lot of equipment, so there's a lot of momentum behind a travelling boat. What we established pretty quickly was that actually the boat that was hit flipped. It dropped the cameraman and one of the other crew members into the water.
I swam to the surface, and there's just carnage, stuff everywhere, equipment. No Brendan. I called out his name, nobody answered.
We spend so much time on boats that perhaps it was only a matter of time before something actually happened. First concern, people, is everybody okay?
The moment where I turned around and saw that the boat was going to hit us will probably live with me forever. It's difficult to remember the impact because I think we were all in quite a lot of shock. I was wearing a camera support device, which was a harness strapped onto me for filming handheld. And I've just released the camera from the harness. If I hadn't released the camera from the harness, I wouldn't be here now. I would have definitely drowned. Now, I can't really give a rational explanation of why I don't let go of the camera, but I can't. And I just sunk like a rock because of the weight.
All that gear attached to him, the camera itself weighs 30, 40 pounds, plus the rig that he's wearing.
And it's only when I get down to the bottom and I look back up at the silhouette of the boat that I realize, well, I have to let go of the camera.
I don't know how long he'd been down, but he was pale, he was gasping for air. He was really struggling on the surface of the water.
James saw that this was happening. Very quick thinking, got me out of the harness, got me onto a boat.
Although there was just this scene of mayhem, we did establish very quickly that everybody was all right. The fact that they're okay is a huge relief. I mean, the people you work with end up being your friends as well. You know, you really don't want anything to happen to them. It's a huge relief. I think if this kind of accident happened at home, you know, you phone up the garage, someone comes along, fixes the motor, you know, you take a day off, you have a cup of tea, all that. But we're basically there to make a film. We've got a very, very tight schedule, and we're losing time, you know. We've got to crack on, so we've got to salvage the stuff that we can. OK, we've lost our main camera, but we do have backup cameras. There's still stuff that we can do. You know, we've got a film to make, a river monster to find and catch. There weren't more incidents like that, but there was a lot more exhaustion on the route before we actually ended up getting what we wanted.
I knew it. Monsters do exist in this place.
So travelling, especially in remote places, can be really hazardous, and for that reason we have to really keep our wits about us when we're moving from place to place. But maintaining that level of concentration is easier said than done, and it only takes one slip-up to ruin your day. Normally when I'm holding a fish, I'm absolutely focused. Okay, I'm always a bit distracted, I've got a director, cameraman, whatever, talking to me. I wasn't paying enough attention. It wasn't very big, and I think sometimes in that situation, you let your guard down. And then I just lost it, you know, I just... some of the language wasn't very good.
That's just dug its spine right in the back of my hand.
The bleeping machine had to work overtime there. It hurt, and also it's a shock. I mean, it really did hurt.
Oh my God.
Catfish have this sort of rather sort of nasty mucus on their spines, and I think it possibly hit a nerve up against a bone. It was just very, very painful. It was a good reminder to me that you cannot even allow yourself momentary lack of concentration, because what I was actually fishing for was a stingray, and these stingrays have something like that on their tail. If it goes in the wrong place, you know, that is potentially life-threatening as well. Another emergency that we had was on the Nile, below the Murchison Falls. You've got the whole Nile River plunging through this cleft in the rock down to a huge eddy called the Devil's Cauldron. You've got crocodiles, there's hippos around. What a place for something to go wrong. And the cause of this accident was, in fact, me. Bit of emergency surgery about to happen. This is a very common fisherman's injury, or, well, it's something that fishermen do a lot, and they shouldn't, which is bite line with their teeth. And I was tightening a knot, and I've lost part of my teeth. So, in the interests of continuity, Barney, the multi-skilled director, is about to perform some Riverside surgery. Luckily, super glue is part of my normal fishing kit. I use it for putting on knots to make sure it's less likely to come undone.
What?
If it went wrong, I could have ended up with the director's finger glued to my mouth.
Looks pretty good.
In fact, both of my two top front teeth are partly made out of plastic. Is that the right position?
Yeah.
Good as new.
Who says the English have bad teeth?
Generally, when people talk about dangerous fish, they're talking about teeth or maybe dangerous spines. But there are other ways that fish can injure you.
I'm afraid. Jeremy is afraid, he's saying. I think that is fairly clear to see.
The arapaima in South America. This is a very large fish, it's very powerful, and it has got a very, very bony head. And they actually use this head almost like a battering ram. We were netting arapaima. I don't know to this day whether it actually was trying to escape and I got in the way, or if it actually saw my silhouette and thought, right, I'm gonna have you. It got me right in the chest here. It hurt so much and bruised me so deeply that I could still feel it 6 weeks later. Very, very painful, but luckily no lasting damage. But the same can't be said for something that happened to me in Thailand, fishing a river there, not very far from the capital, Bangkok. We'd heard there were very, very big stingrays in the river, enormous beasts. Stories of people being attached to something for a matter of hours. This was very unsophisticated, very physical fishing. These are fish that not only are they very heavy, but also because of their shape, they can just stick themselves to the bottom. Often we have a situation where the director will suddenly have a bright idea and get me doing something which sort of at first sounds a little bit silly. Now, in Thailand, I was asked to jump out of the boat at the riverbank into this really gloopy mud and then just move around in the mud for a bit.
This is, you know, I'm heavy, I go down into the mud. The stingray is flat, it's a bit like a snowshoe, so it doesn't actually sink into this. But if it wants to, a little flutter of its wings and it can actually heap some of this stuff on top of it, and I could be playing a fish that is like 3-4 times the size of me, maybe with the same weight of that on top of the body. So it's going to be quite a job getting one of these things out of this mud.
That was a good preparation for me starting to fish for these stingrays. I was going to be fishing really, really heavy gear.
Just testing my line here.
Rod attached to me with a harness, 2 boats rafted up so that the boat wouldn't flip, and then someone hanging on to this harness behind my back so that I wouldn't end up in the water. I actually hooked a fish fairly quickly. I suppose after about 5 or 10 minutes, it was clear that this was a very big fish.
It does feel like having just hooking the bottom of the river.
I knew then that I was in for potentially a very, very long struggle.
I get 2 inches, another 2 inches, 2 inches, and then every so often the fish just wakes up and takes about 2 foot.
I think even after sort of 20 minutes, I'm just wanting it to end.
I'm starting to wonder if I ought to put my glasses on, not because of the sunlight, because I just have visions of this rod suddenly shattering and getting a face full of fiberglass and carbon fibre.
Jeremy was like a man possessed, really focused. This stingray is going to be the biggest fish he's ever pulled out of a river.
Oh, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. I think it's come off the bottom. There was a sudden sort of break of suction.
Worst case scenario, the line jams on his reel and the fish decides to dive. Now in that situation, unless Jeremy cuts his line, he's going down too.
From the moment I hooked it to when I actually saw it on the surface, that was almost exactly 2 hours.
Right, there's the weight in view. It's about 1.5 meters below the surface.
I'm slurring my words, I can barely talk. Now, a fish like that, you can't bring it in the boat. What we had a net draped down the side of the boat, and the idea was the guys were going to push, using lengths of bamboo, the net under the stingray and then gather it to the side of the boat.
No, is it in? No.
The fish was just a little bit too far away from the side of the boat, so what I'm doing, I'm having to raise the rod to bring it closer to us. And then just suddenly there's a bang.
Oh!
And the weight of the fish has gone.
What happened?
I think you can see on the footage that I'm just looking, it's almost an expression of disbelief. How could I just go through all of this for 2 hours and then just have nothing to show for it?
Right, look at that. That is... The rod went. The rod went. This rod is a bit long for this boat, but I actually saw the fish. We nearly had it in the net, but an almighty bang. I thought it was my shoulder going for a minute, but it was actually the rod.
When I look at this, what it reminds me of is the fact that I will never know how big that fish was. And if I try and bend it, you know, there is some give, but in the footage there, you can see that this thing was almost into a semicircle. But, you know, I can hardly make any impression on that. And I did feel something in my arm, in my shoulder. When my arm actually went, well, I've got a bit of a hole there in my upper arm. Normally on your biceps, you've got 2 tendons. You've got one that attaches up here, you've got another one that attaches here, and this one here is no longer there. So there's actually a hole, this little bit of muscle here, with nothing left to attach it. It's actually retracted inside there. It's something like 5 to 7% less strength in that arm now, so it's something I can live with. I look at that and I remember that was done by a stingray in Thailand. That's actually still painful to watch. Other things are just embarrassing, but when you think that you shoot hundreds of hours in the course of making a series, certain things are bound to go wrong, but at least we get a laugh out of some of that.
Oh! It's Dorado. Ah. I'm using a piece of coconut flesh. Right. What happened there? Oh, the legs fell off. This is where I'm sleeping. I'm inside. I just hope this thing doesn't come in to join me. Hey!
This is take 15. I was in Japan looking for an animal they call the Hanzaki there.
Now, if you saw one of these down in your local stream, I can fully understand you not wanting your child to go swimming there.
This is something that has inspired stories about an animal in the water dragging children in. I was with a scientist, and in this pool below a waterfall, we'd seen the tail of something poking out from underneath a rock. So it was my job to go in and grab it. Now, the trouble is, because I'm wearing a wetsuit, I'm just too buoyant. I just can't get down to it. So we ended up rigging up this makeshift weight belt. The scientist had a string bag and a belt, so I put this around my waist and then filled it up with rocks. And it worked fine. This actually took me down to where these creatures were. I grabbed one, I came out, and then as I was coming towards the bank, I felt something thumping against the inside of my leg. Now, I thought this was the creature's big brother or something coming after me, trying to drag me back down there.
Oh, it's the rocks! I thought it was his dad or something come out to sort me out. I forgot I had loads of rocks dangling between my legs there.
Really, really embarrassing.
Oh, it's the rocks!
There's not anything coming after me at all, but it helped to make a really good dramatic scene.
I think it'd be wrong to come to Brazil without mentioning the country's national sport, which is actually so big here that even the fish are playing. Goal! Most fresh water is too murky to see into, which is why I normally just put a line in. Why I have to. Sorry, I'm just getting the sense of it as I am. Most fresh water is actually too murky to see. Most fresh water is too murky to really see anything when you're just looking into the... no, I just lost my train of thought there. Sorry, I was just aware there's a child now crying.
So, I mean, it's nice sometimes to have a bit of a laugh at yourself, but sometimes when things go wrong, that's actually the last thing you're going to do. When suddenly you're thrown into a waking nightmare. And that's exactly what happened to us in Suriname on the northern fringe of South America. It's a very unpopulated place. You're literally on your own there. We were on the Corentyne River. As is often the case, we're in a place where if anything happens, we can't just call emergency services. It would be quite a procedure to get somebody out to get help if we needed it. When we're filming, we're often working around the weather. We can film when it's raining, but it makes life difficult. The other thing is that particularly in the tropics, you get big storms. You don't want to be out in the weather for safety reasons. You don't want to be waving a carbon fibre rod, a sound boom pole, anything like that. So this particular day, we'd actually been sitting beside the river in an Indian village waiting for this storm to go. And eventually it cleared, the sky is clear. Okay, we're going to go to this rock in the middle of the river. We're going to catch some crabs and we're going to try and catch some fish. A lot of what we do is dual purpose. We always have our target fish, but also we are living off the land. We take provisions with us, but sometimes if the fish populations are healthy, we're also fishing for our supper. We're filming on the rock, just concentrating on filming. the weather has gone, the cloud had disappeared off downriver. We thought that we were at no risk whatsoever.
This is a classic example of pure fishing in a way. It's starting with absolutely nothing, just coming down with a couple of rods, no bait, and just poking around in these cracks to find crabs, and then a crab is pulled into pieces, and that's where we start from. And hopefully we turn that.
Without thinking at all, it was pure reflex. I just hit the deck because you do not want to be poking up above the ground in that kind of situation.
Hey, should I take this off?
I would.
Yeah?
What he had a device, a bit like a sort of a rucksack frame, but then with an arm coming over his head, and the camera was actually hanging off that.
Yeah, that was running. Oh my God.
That was right on top of us. Take the rig off, yeah.
We now want to just get in the boat and get out of here.
Abandoning. We are abandoned. That was further away.
Just 1 second. We're getting in the boat and we're going. Let's go.
It's going to take a few goes.
Oh my God. Oh. I have never felt anything like that before.
That was absolutely.
Literally meters away. That was insane.
I think the worst moment of this whole experience was getting in the boat, right far out the boat, we need to get out of here, and then suddenly the awareness that there is a body lying motionless in the bottom of the boat. And that was Chris, our sound man.
Right, we might need some first aid here.
Yeah. Let's go for it. Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Quick. What's happening, Jeremy? Jeremy, what's happening?
Our sound recorder has been hit, was actually struck on the head by that bolt of lightning. So we're going back to the Indian village. Peter is just administering some first aid, just putting some cold water on his head. It's very important that the rest of us, though, keep our heads down.
I think when I saw Chris in the bottom of the boat, I mean, that's one of those moments when it's actually something's happened to somebody else, but almost your own heart stops. For that very, very brief moment, they're not moving, and you know, are they dead? Are they going to die?
Chris, are you okay? Are you responding?
This is someone who is part of your team. They're there to do a job, but also you get very close to the people that you work with in this kind of situation, and you really feel for them.
Stitch has been hit by lightning, so we need to work out what we should do now. We need to phone the office, see whether we need to get an evac, we need to assess him and see...
I knew what had happened. And I think from seeing a huge ball of blue light on the top of my head, with the loud bang, I knew that I'd been struck. I probably flew about 2 meters back into the boat. Right, is my heart going to stop any second now? I was really scared. I could hear Dan, the assistant producer, discussing whether to get a helicopter to evacuate me.
Seems to be fine. We spoke to...
We had literally half an hour from that moment to decide to call a plane to get us out or not. Problem was, the satellite phone is pretty reliable, but not 100% reliable.
Okay, can you hear me?
You might not have a satellite actually in line of sight. You turn it on, you're looking at the bars that tell you, whether you're going to get through or not. You're waiting, or you get through and it cuts.
You got me now? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Luckily, we established fairly quickly that he was probably going to be all right, but just for a very short period of a couple of moments, just that, really, really bad feeling that something terrible could have happened.
It's these rubber soles that I believe is what took the brunt of the lightning strike going through me. I think if I was barefooted, I wouldn't be here today.
I was wondering if that meant anything to you.
Well, the last time I tried to eat an ice cream like this was in Thailand, beside a lake, and I'd been fishing all afternoon, nothing happening at all, very hot afternoon, and there was a shop fairly nearby, so somebody went off to get some ice creams. I'm really looking forward to this ice cream. I started to open it. In fact, I don't think I'd even, you know, broken the wrapping at all when something actually made off with one of the baits. So I dropped the ice cream, brought the fish in.
It's an alligator gar, native of North America.
And then, oh, where's that ice cream? Did anybody tread on it? No, they didn't. Picked it up. And I start to open it again, and then another fish goes. This actually happened 3 times.
It's an arapaima.
That has to be the most surprising method I've stumbled across for enticing fish. Normally, it's more logical. I like to talk to local people and hear their stories, and the best place for that is the fish market. Very good places to start to see what kinds of fish you've got in the water, and more importantly, you get to meet the people who know about the fish, and they could give you interesting leads. The activity can be really frenetic. I mean, people are just, you know, they are there, they want to get their work done really quickly.
I'm very conscious that, you know, to be careful not to get in the way here. I'm just putting my nose in trying to get some information. And there's people coming through with, I don't know, there's a guy just now, a huge quantity of fish on his head, just going, just get out of the way, just talk to everybody in general, not just me, just get out of the way, get out of the way. Had this huge weight of fish on his head, and you've got that going on the whole time while I'm just sort of sitting scratching my head, looking at stuff, thinking how interesting it is.
Most places, if you say, oh, we're television, they'll all stop for that. Fish markets, they don't care. They want you to just get out of the way. I can understand that entirely if it's somebody with maybe 100, maybe even 200 pounds of fish on their head. I wouldn't want to be hanging around because someone was messing around with a camera in front of me.
So many fish coming out of here, but you know, it's one thing for me to look, you know, the sheer volume of fish, but it's also the weight. So I'm going to see if what one of these sacks of fish actually feels like. There are just so many of them actually coming out of the river, but going to have a quick go, seeing if I can actually support it. Whether I can actually walk with it is another matter. Whether I can carry 2, like some of these people are, is, you know, I think I'll stop at 1. Anyway, over there. Ah. Moment to you. No. Hey, okay, now I'm standing still. I can sort of. Pesa quantos, yes, más o menos. 60 kilo. 60 kilos. This is about 130, nearly 150 pounds perhaps. I can feel it compressing my neck vertebrae. I would not like to do this work. I mean, I'm having trouble just standing with this thing. In terms of actually running my way through a crowd, getting people out of the way, people like me are just standing in the way. Some of these people have been carrying 2 sacks, and this is happening every night of the year. No, I think that's enough. I've got to put it down. That makes the point. Tira. Oh. I feel like I'm floating. It's that thing when you take a rucksack off. Take that off your head. I just feel like I'm floating in midair. Obrigado. Just go for it.
No doubt about it, that is absolutely back-breaking work. I certainly wouldn't want to do that all day. But it is very important that I try and experience what other people do rather than just observing. However, this hands-on approach sometimes gets me into deep water. I was looking into Piraiba catfish, stories of them swallowing people, and also piranhas attacking people. Now, these gold miners live on board a raft, and they actually go underwater with diving gear, and they spend hours and hours and hours just vacuuming up silt from the bottom, which then goes up to the raft, and it has the gold sort of filtered out of it. So I wanted to really pick their brains. What do they see when they're down there under the water? There are some places, and these places are well known, where there are lots of piranha and they are hungry. All you've got to do is dangle a fish, even if you're holding it, in the water off the side of the raft, and they will come and destroy it. And he says places like that, nobody gets in the water, basically.
So when I was given the rare opportunity to go down into the water myself, it was with mixed emotions that I accepted.
I've been hearing these stories about large catfish in the water engulfing people. I've been hearing about piranhas attacking people. On top of that, the water where we were, pretty bad visibility. You're not going to see something till it's almost right on top of you. And then there was the case of their gear. It looked quite primitive. There was a big compressor on the boat, which is feeding air down a hose. This isn't a nice scuba tank or anything, it's just a hose coming down to you. And then the other thing, to illuminate what you're doing, there's actually an electric light bulb on the end of a wire, and I was just about to go down. They said, oh, just shove this in the band of your mast. So I've got this live electric wire, and I'm getting into the water with that. As I was going under the water, the first thing that really struck me was how bad the visibility was. Even with this electric light bulb next to my face, I could see possibly 18 inches, something like that. So when you're on the bottom, and what you're doing is you're blasting this jet of water at the silt, and then with this other tube, you're sucking it all up. Something could be right next to you, you wouldn't see it. In the back of my mind was the fact that that very river holds massive catfish that grow to sort of 9 feet long, with a mouth that could actually swallow a human being. And you are there in their environment, and you actually wouldn't see them until they're right on top of you. I mean, that's sort of, it's something you've got to keep in the back of your mind and try not to dwell too much on.
That was interesting. New kind of diving. I don't know if we got anything, but it's a different kind of day's work, that is.
What an amazing experience that was, actually being in the realm of the fish. But the next thing I really wanted to know was, had I found them any gold?
Fica na areia, ó. Esse negócio branco aí, a impureza.
Wow, look at that. That is a bit of gold that was, you know, until half an hour ago, that was on the bottom of this river. And these guys, you know, they just see it every day. For me, that's quite a big deal. It's gold.
That time under the water, despite the fact that I could hardly see anything, remains one of my most vivid memories from all my travels. But for sheer terror, nothing compares with being in an aircraft that's falling from the sky. That time, I saw everything, and so did the camera.
I try and be calm, but I know, yeah, there's part of me that isn't quite comfortable with the experience.
This happened about 10 years ago, so pre-River Monsters. I was in the Amazon, and we were filming aerials. Small plane, one engine. We had the main door off so that the cameras could get a clear view. I was in the co-pilot seat, so the pilot's on my left. As we were coming down, there's a loud sort of popping noise. The whole aircraft just started to vibrate. Something's happened to the engine. Tops of the trees just rising up to meet us. The sound of branches flicking the underside of the plane. I thought this is going to hurt really badly. Everything stopped moving. The very first breath that I took, there's just this overpowering smell of fuel. There was this liquid coming down on my shoulders. We've escaped the impact, we're just going to go up in flames. The water's coming up. I tried to undo my harness. I couldn't undo it. This is it. I'm going to drown. Took the knife out of my belt, just about to cut it, and the pilot freed the buckle. We've actually come down in swamp.
Nossa Senhora.
As I emerged, I was greeted by the sight of 4 people. I swam over to them, they pulled me up. Everybody's okay. Miraculously, one camera is still rolling.
22 anos de voo. Nunca tinha visto isso. 20, yeah. This pilot, 22 anos, 22 years flying. This has never happened before, first time.
I was doing quite a bit of sort of video diary stuff at the end of each day very often. It was about just getting a sense, a record of what that day had been like for me.
Everyone's very... We had quite a happy day. We went and had a big lunch.
There's something about putting something into words that that just gets to you. I don't know why that is.
And everything was surprisingly normal. And
that just suddenly got to me, and I just couldn't continue. Not surprisingly, that left me feeling pretty uneasy about flying, but that's not really compatible with what I do. I spend a lot of time in the air, not just getting to the place where I want to go, but also in light planes and helicopters, getting the amazing aerials that you see. You've normally got music over that. What a lot of people don't realise, though, is that what you see on screen isn't always quite the full picture. Got the doors open, people whooping and screaming in the back of the aircraft. So occasionally we may have to suspend reality ever so slightly to bring you beautiful aerials, but otherwise what you see is what you get. And that's the approach we've adopted right from day one when we set about filming the first ever episode of River Monsters in the Himalayas in India. I'd heard these stories about something strange happening in a particular river. People disappearing. Some people there said that it was a particular fish, a large fish. One possibility was that this was a type of catfish called a goon catfish.
It looks like a goon, but it's vast.
It could be reaching freak sizes as a result of the custom there of cremating dead people at the side of the river and then putting the half-burnt remains into the water. Very, very important that we caught this fish, because actually without the fish we wouldn't have a film. We had all this wonderful background stuff, but no actual animal to have a look at. Where we ended up fishing was a very dangerous place. The monsoon rains had started, the water was running very, very powerfully.
This is actually the early stages of a possible flash flood. No rain here, but suddenly the water has gone dark and chocolatey. It's actually risen about 2 feet before my eyes. A couple of days ago, 4 local fishermen, people who know the water, were just washed away.
Goonch can be very, very hard to catch, and the desperation was just mounting, mounting, mounting. You just start putting the hours in. At times we were fishing round the clock, so physically getting pretty worn out, but mentally as well. The shirt was almost like a clock. It just showed how long that we'd been at it. More and more holes gradually appearing until there were more holes than shirt.
Jeremy and I must have made 3 trips to India, probably totaling 6 or 7 weeks.
It got to the point where we would have done almost anything to get a fish.
We hadn't caught anything for days, and we were fishing at the same spot we'd been fishing at for the last few weeks.
Oh, it's a kick. Come on, come on, come on.
He had a look in his eye, the way he was behaving told me that this was it.
I actually felt under a lot of pressure to get a result, to catch that fish.
He gets down to the end of the beach and then just pulls his radio microphone off.
Take it off, take it off.
He's going in the water.
This you water one?
Yeah.
No,
water is very deep.
No, son. Very.
The fish is gone. If it goes further.
Don't worry. This coming is.
When there was a chance of getting the fish when it's on the end of the line, well, I mean, sometimes that makes you do things that in ordinary circumstances maybe you wouldn't.
I'm going to have to go across.
Nothing would stop him. I was worried he was going to drown. I thought the fish could come and get him, or he's going to get tangled in his line and just get pulled to the bottom. My feeling of joy when Jeremy had gotten across the river quickly disappeared because I knew I had to get over there. I can't swim with the camera. I just grabbed what I could and ran. Up the cliff face, along the road, maybe half a kilometre, across a bridge. I was absolutely exhausted.
And that's really where it all started, that human-sized goonch catfish on the riverbank in North India. That's really what led to everything that's followed since, all these other adventures around the world, and what an amazing journey it's turned out to be.
Yes.
Look at that for a fish!
Monster of the Amazon. This river is just absolutely full of piranhas.
Oh my God!
Fish on, fish on!
Nah, those teeth!
They do exist.